In this video, I'm going to show you how to use spotlighting to color simple line art like this and make it look like this. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video to see exactly how I do this. And also for my subscribers, I've decided to give you guys this PSD. So all you have to do is like this video and leave a comment with your email address down in the comment section below. If you're new to this channel, I make art tutorials for coloring comics and I share beginner artist tips and advice for young artists starting out and seasoned veterans. So you can click the link above to check out other tutorials I've made, and be sure to subscribe to my channel to see more content that I'll be putting out in the long run. So spotlighting is when just a particular area or portion of your image is being hit by the main light source or the key light, and this usually happens because there are other elements or other objects that are blocking the light from kind of hitting the other parts of the image. So I'm just going to show you how I'll use that lighting technique on this image right now. So as you can see, I've just created a plain gray background and I just selected the entire character and I filled him with gray, and right now I've already started creating the mood that I want to go into the image with. I'm already thinking of how the lighting is going to be. There's going to be majorly light hitting his mask, so I've already made the areas around him that I want to leave in shadow. I don't want light to hit them. I've already made them darker right now just by using simple grays, and then I've started creating the clouds of smoke that are going to be behind him. So in this image, the kind of color palette I was thinking of was kind of this blue, green, purples, and a bit of pinks and reds just to push the contrast of the image, but the blues and greens are really going to be the harmonious colors that I was using in this image. As you can see, there's a lot of green in that smoke. I'm entirely going to use just green for the smoke, and then I'm going to base the character on just blues. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just following the shapes of the smoke that I already created, and I'm just filling in the lighter colors with making sure that I'm following that particular shape that the smoke is taking, the form that I created. When you're doing this kind of images, you really don't want to break the form that you already have created with the smoke, so you have to keep that in mind. So if you create a circular form, make sure all the curves, all the selections you're making are going to flow into that circular form. Don't go and start making squares when your initial shape is a circle, unless that's your style. Well, it's fine, you can always do that. Next step is to create another layer above the silhouette of the character, and then I clip it below onto the silhouette of the character, and then I start painting in that rim light that's hitting the character from the right hand side. Also, I'm kind of thinking that there's a green light source coming directly from behind him that's filling in and making that smoke green. That's why it's also hitting his head, because you can just tell that smoke is usually made up of just dust particles and it will be affected by the light in the atmosphere. So if you have a red colored light and it's filling in the atmosphere with that red light source, your smoke is going to be geared towards red a little bit. So that's just the mindset I used to paint that green, and also because I wanted it to be my harmonious color with the blues. So right now I just filled in the character with the blue, and this really works for me because I just like to set the entire mood, the entire tones that I was going to use in the image. I just like to just fill all the colors out right now so I can see what the final image is going to look like. So right now, this is going to be my key light source. As you can see, I just selected the area of his mask and I'm using that as the spotlight. That's the spotlight. That's the only place that the key light is going to be hitting, and I'm making sure that it's bright, really bright, so it's going to bounce off and reflect light into the other parts of his face and I'm just going to use some environmental light to light the other areas that light is going to touch. So that means I'm going to use the ambient light to just hit other areas in the image. So right now I'm using a linear dodge layer, because if you use a linear dodge layer with a saturated color, it's going to make it brighter and still maintain the vibrance of that color. But if you use a screen layer, it's going to make it brighter, but it will lose some saturation with the color. But I wanted this to be a really saturated image and still be really bright, so I had to use a linear dodge layer for that. Then next, I just created a normal layer and clipped it above the character, the silhouette of the character, and now I'm just painting in just a little bit of the places where that bounce light from the key light will be hitting. Now you want to always keep in mind that if you're creating a shaft of light or a spotlight source on your character, you also have to think about the other elements, the other areas that the light is going to hit and how they are going to react, if they're going to be as reflective or how much light is going to hit them. You also have to think about the materials. So I'm thinking of this material as really shiny, that's why I'm letting a lot of light just bounce around and hit his mask. Whereas for the other areas, I'm just going to use a little bit of the ambient light source, the environmental light, to just light them up, but they're not going to be as bright as the main key light, which is the light that's hitting his mask, the spotlight. Next thing I did was just create a multiply layer and just use that to pretty much darken some parts of the image where I don't want any light to hit, and the ambient occlusions like inside his suit and just all the other tighter spots that light will not even get to because of the amount of spotlighting that I'm using in this image. Then I just created a normal layer, and then I'm just using pretty much the blues just to complement and kind of go along with that initial tone, the initial vibe I had in the image, which was to use blues and purples. So as you can see, I already have my purples and pinks in his face. So next is to just introduce the blues, you know, the cyans, all the colors that will be harmonious with green. Now I'm going to have to do a separate tutorial where I talk about color harmonies, but you always want to think about 2 to 3 color harmonies in an image if you want the image to be really eye-catchy and stand out. So right now I just chose the cyans, the blues and the purples, and those will go with the greens, and then I have a little bit of yellows and oranges just to contrast that hard purple that's on his face. That's why I'm using the yellows and oranges on his suit of armor. So as you can see, I'm just using just a little bit of light that's in the environment, a little bit of ambient light just to light this suit. I'm not really going too crazy, too fancy, just to throw in light everywhere. It's just places, just accent places that I want light to hit. You also want to keep in mind that you're doing a spotlighting, so other places, other areas in the image are meant to be cut off from that key light. So you have to always keep that in mind when you're creating an image like this with this spotlight. So the main lights you're going to be using are your ambient lights, which is the light that's in the environment, because if there's one light source, which is the key light, is going to hit other objects around and then bounce off. The light is going to bounce off all those other objects and fill into the space, fill into the other areas of the character. So you always want to keep that in mind. It's also called fill light. So right now I'm just using that, just creating other elements of the character and just painting them in gradually. And I'm just thinking about this awesome guy on YouTube. His name is Dave Greco. I watched a lot of his videos yesterday and I just really love the way he used his colors, the way he painted, and it just really inspired everything about this piece, the colors I'm using and the way I'm even lighting the piece. So if you want to check out more of this kind of images with really fancy lighting and sweet colors, I'll suggest you should go over to Dave Greco's channel and just check out videos he has done. You really learn a thing or two. And you can also check out his Instagram page or his ArtStation. His work is really mind-blowing. I mean, I really have to take at least just 1 week to digest all the information I'm taking in just from looking at his work. There's a lot you can learn for anyone that's really into art. I mean, if you just take out time and study other people's work, you really learn a lot. So right now I'm just taking my time to pretty much bring up the details on the all elements of his suit, and I was thinking of just leaving them plain blue, but just to have some kind of other colors in the mix and not to keep the entire palette just too bland, I decided to just bring up other colors into the elements in his costume. So right now I'm just rendering the helmet and just making sure that I'm not making it as bright as the light that's hitting his mask. So you have to keep in mind how bright you want each element to be in regards to where you want focus to be in the image. So I want the viewer immediately looks at this image, your eye should just go straight on to the mask and just look at the mask. Before you can start just shifting your focus into other parts of the image and just looking around and appreciating the other elements in the image. I want you to first just look at the mask. So I'm making sure that I put all the detail that I have in the image into that mask area, and then the other parts will have a little bit of detail, but it won't be as much as the amount of detail that I'm going to have in that area where the spotlight is. So you also have to keep that in mind. I mean, really nailing lighting and just understanding how light works really just takes a lot of practice and a lot of study from still lives and a lot of studies from movies. So if you try this technique, or if you try lighting characters like this and you really don't understand what you're doing and you're not getting it right the first time, just take your time and relax and keep on doing more studies. Eventually you get to understand how light just interacts with objects and how cast shadows work, how bounce light works and all that. You always have to keep on doing a lot of studies when you're trying to create really amazing lighting off the top of your head. You really want to make sure that you're doing studies each day of just fruits on your desk, maybe a toy on your desk, or just taking photos of yourself and just doing studies of how the light works in the images that you're taking. So make sure that you do your studies every day just to understand how light works. I hope you really enjoyed this image. I mean, it was a really fun image for me. It's been a while since I just took out my time and just made an image with solely just my decisions based on just my judgments. It's been a really long time I kind of made images like this. So in the long run, I think I'll keep on doing more images like this and practicing with my lighting as well. So make sure you leave this video a like and drop a comment down below with your email address so I can send you the PSD. I'd love to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you for letting me do what I do. And if you love to support my work and my channel, you could go down and click the link in the description to subscribe to my Patreon page. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video. Peace.